we've been talking quite a bit about goal setting and kind of the long game and everything. Um, but there's also the day to day of a kid using the system. Like we've been talking about the long game of advising them into the right goals, making sure that they're making progress and everything. But there's a lot that we could share about, like, as a parent, what do you do when you like your kid just starts using the system, and how do you make sure they're successful? And like, of course, you got these goals in mind, right? You're trying to keep opportunities open for your kid, try to make sure they're prepared, get them just you want the best for them in the long term, but sometimes sometimes it's difficult in the short term because
Yeah.
you can't just like sit them in front of the computer like, okay, kid, like do your math, and like let's check in about 5 years, and then we can talk about like
Yeah. So,
what you learned.
yeah.
Like,
Well, there are a few kids that I work with, but very few. Yeah.
yeah. So how do you make this work? How do you make it, even if you have the perfect plan, something that even the kid is excited about, like that they are excited about learning all this math and the kinds of like life avenues it opens up, and they yeah, they're on board with that, but like they don't always know how to be productive towards that day to day, yeah, using the
Yeah.
system.
Well, I mean, well, there's things to do, and then there's failure modes to avoid,
Yeah.
right? And the first thing I'd say is for younger students, when I say for younger, I mean like students under the age of maybe 13. You're talking, kind of early middle school and younger, maybe even up slightly older, depending on the personality or maturity of the student is. You have to model for them how to do math and how to learn math. And what that means is that they need to sit down at a desk with paper and pencil, read through the lesson carefully, work through the examples on paper. If they don't understand something, they can scroll back to the example, the introduction, not to guess, not to rush, do their work in at least somewhat of an organized fashion, these kinds of things, because the younger students don't always know to do this stuff, right? They just go
Yeah.
crazy, especially the boys. For some reason, the boys they tend to be mainly
Yeah.
with younger.
Back when I was teaching in the school program, yeah, I remember just getting the new sixth graders. It'd be like, it's like somebody just like hands you like a crate of puppies, and like, okay,
I ran around.
have fun. Yeah. And they're
You
just
did
like
that.
going
You had a
everywhere.
failure mode. You're like, everybody just do a lesson or do a thing, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And they just what happened?
Yeah. Well, kind of like you're saying, you get like maybe one or two students who just like they just do it the right way. Happens to be typically not all the girls, but the students who are just fine
More
out of the gate and to
conscientious,
be the
a
girls,
little more
more
mature, more
conscientious,
conscientious.
and they're also like sometimes just like paying more attention to what you have asked them to do, and trying
Yeah,
to
they're
make a good impression.
all the roles.
Yeah,
They want to please the
yeah,
teacher, do what they're supposed to do.
yeah,
Boys are
yeah,
just
and
like,
so yeah. Now there's some. There were definitely some girls who were like that too, but yeah, um, but okay. So aside from those exceptions to the rule here, yeah, all this it'd be like chaos. I learned that like the very first time that first day of class that we like deployed the system with the sixth graders. I know no battle plan survives contact with
the
the
enemy,
enemy.
right?
But I was not prepared. I was not, even after tutoring and everything, like just because I guess the thing is, like, when you're tutoring, you're kind of you're more in control of the session,
Yes.
and you don't have like tens of students that you're managing at once tutoring. Like, it's
Mhm.
just you and one or two kids. Get a class of like plenty of sixth graders, yeah, things go crazy. So some of the failure modes are some Well, I guess just
Well, on that first day,
I'll enumerate
well, I
them,
remember
but
the first day, like they blew through and they were just guessing, the boys in particular, but they were just guessing everything, trying to get XP. And if they failed, they were like, fine. And they were just burning through lesson after lesson. You're like, whoa, what is happening? Stop, 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 stop. And they did like a bunch of lessons. They failed a bunch in a
yeah,
row
yeah,
before you even could
yeah.
realize what was going on. And you're just like, everybody stop, right?
Yeah, you're like, what is happening? Yeah, right. So there's failure modes of right, guessing through questions, not reading the tutorials and worked examples. There's also the opposite failure mode of stalling out on a question because you haven't read the tutorial and the worked example. So you just it's like you get really excited. You're like, oh, I'm gonna speed run this task. Skip the tutorial, work example. Ah, looks easy. You do you go to the question. You're like, whoa, like how do you do this? I don't know how to do this. Like, Justin, why didn't you teach me how to do this? Aren't you supposed to be teaching me stuff? And so the solution to this problem is that you just sit next to the student and then just model for them what to do. But for some of these students who are particularly hard-headed, you have to model for them in a kind of hard-headed way. And like, if you want to be stubborn, I can be stubborn too. Like, okay, let's go back to the tutorial. Read it for me. What you didn't read it. You just skimmed it. You skipped it again. Like you didn't actually read it. Like
Because they would
word
do
for
that.
word. I
They
want
would
you to
do
read
that,
it.
right?
Yeah,
They would refuse
yeah,
to read it.
yeah. I'd be like, go back, like read the tutorial. I'll just sit here while you read it, and then like instead of taking like 2 seconds and then skipping, they take like 10 seconds and skip. And I'm like, no, you didn't
You
actually
didn't
read
even
it.
skim it. You
You
just
just kind of
looked at it. The first time you
yeah,
didn't look
yeah,
at it. The second time you looked at it. Now you're going to try to skim it. Now you're going to read. Now read
yeah.
carefully, right? It's like
Exactly.
there's a
Yeah,
big difference between and also like at that age, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh grade even, they mostly have been learning to read, not reading to learn, right? They've never really had to read to learn something, right? They had reading
yeah,
class, read this book or read this section, and we're going to answer some questions on it. But everything else was just spoken to them, instructed them in person
yeah.
out loud. So they've never really learned, like, how do I read this to understand something that I don't understand so that then I can do something? That's a new skill for them.
Yeah, yeah. So you get a mix of kids who some kids are just like skipping and stuff because they're just being stubborn. Other kids, they really have no idea what you're asking them to do. You might as well be asking them to read a book and they don't even know how to read yet. Or like
It's just a
it's
skill. They
just
just lack the skill. They just don't have the
yeah,
skill.
they just lack the skills. So what you have to do is, and this works on both groups of students who are stubborn and students who don't know how to do it, is you just assume that they have no idea how to do this, and
Which is a good
you
assumption
help.
because it's mostly
Yeah,
true.
yeah, it's mostly true.
Okay, so you have a couple
And
students who like you didn't explain it. That's fine. It's just everybody like this is how we
yeah,
do this.
and you say, well, let's just go through it word by word. Read this out loud. Read this out loud to me. We'll just read it together. I'm not going to read it for you because you need to be the one reading it. So just read it out loud. It's okay if you stumble on a word or whatever. Like it doesn't matter. Just read it out loud for me. Let's just go through the steps to make sure that you can do this. And then so they'll go and read it out loud. And this works great for the kids who really don't know what they're supposed to be doing because this you're effectively teaching them how to do this
Right.
with active practice. You're the tennis instructor who's like, this is the movement that I want you to do. Now I'm going to throw some balls at you. You go do that. You hit the balls in this way. That's what you're doing. And for the kids who are stubborn, they're realizing that like you're not going to give up on them. You're not going to go away. They're not going to get out of this without doing it the right way. And they can either just do it the right way and not have you come in to be Mr. Helpful.
Well, that's a whole nother thing we
Yeah,
should talk
yeah,
about.
you
Right?
can, yeah, yeah. but they know if they don't perform, they're going to get this annoying like person who comes in and just like
What are you doing? What's happening?
harries them to just like yeah, read word for word. It just becomes like kind of painful for them because they're like, because in their mind they're like man, I already know how to do this, why are you making me do this? And then you're like, okay, great, you know how to do this, then just do it, and then I don't have to be here, you don't have to be reading it reading it aloud. Like this is the deal that we'll make. You know what you're supposed to do, just go do it, and then I'm not gonna like be here making slowing you down in it.
Let's
And
talk a
so
little
you
bit
do,
about Mr. Helpful.
yeah. So why
So
don't you were the one who came up with this analogy. So why don't you give the
well,
background on it? Because it's
so
perfect. Yeah.
when you were teaching these classes, we first rolling this out, you would come to my house. We were working out of my home, and you would come here after teaching, and I would inevitably talk. How did this class go? How did that class go? We would just kind of talk through it, and I remember, a couple things happened. One, I would say, well, when there's a failure mode, what's the failure mode? And you're like, well, a lot, fair amount of the time, the student just is not reading carefully. I mean, once you get them over the bar of just reading, okay, once they do read it and they go, okay, I got to read it and I got to, okay, substantial, and you can even maybe tell me what the proportion of the pie chart is of a time, but the failure mode is they didn't read carefully. And that was what percent would you say of the failure mode? 60?
75%.
How much?
75.
75.
I'd
Okay.
say 3/4 of the time. Yeah.
And then, so then you would have to come to them and say, okay, they would say, Justin, I'm confused. And you're like, oh, what are you confused about? And they would say, well, it's confusing. You're like, oh.
Yeah.
And then you would come over and you'd say, okay, well, read that first sentence to me in the tutorial. And he'd read it. Can I read that? Just say, do you understand that? And they're like, yes.
Yeah.
Okay, now read the second sentence. Do you understand that? Yes. Okay, okay, I understand now. It's like, okay, right? That was,
Yeah.
and then
Exactly.
another failure mode that I remember was they would just they would copy down the information wrong. It was just 2, and they wrote down a 3, or they just wouldn't.
Yeah, they wouldn't read. They wouldn't read the problem statement carefully,
Right, not
or
with
they'd be
another.
working through the worked example, and they wouldn't be writing this down. They'd just be like looking at it, kind of being like, "Oh, yes, sure, that sort of makes sense." Like, no, write it down.
Write it down and be careful.
Actually, do it. Yeah.
And then another one was that they would just be a little sloppy with their work and make little.
Oh yeah, yeah. Funny. Again, mostly the boys.
Yes.
Or just like, I had one kid who would he would use a different sheet of paper for every problem, and he would write really really big, um, and he would write so big that like he would have to start like carrying over horizontally into like he'd be solving like just a linear
Wrapping,
equation.
that's the equation.
Oh yeah, he'd get to the end of the paper, he'd writing so big, and then he'd be like, "Oh crap, I ran out of space." Like go to the other like side, go horizontally, then start running like
Right.
diagonally, and then like by the time I come to help him out, I'm like, "Huh, so where did this problem start on your paper? Where's the next step?" And he's just like, "Oh, you want here, then here, then here, then here." And I'm like, "Well, this is the
just
problem."
like pre-algebra, right? This is like pre-algebra, basic. This isn't like
Yeah.
they're doing this 3-page calculus problem, right? I mean, this is really 3 or 4 steps of really simple manipulation,
Yeah.
short equations. There's no reason that should happen.
Exactly. Yeah, and then some kids will like work all the problems on the same sheet of
They
paper
jam it in
and
a
run into the
corner
same
and
problem where it's like maybe initially it starts out going well. It's like, okay, this is neat, this is neat, this is neat, this is neat. Okay, time for a new sheet of paper. But they're like, no, I'm gonna just like there's some space over here and over here and over here, and I'm just gonna like first part of the problem is going to be in the bottom left, and then we'll move to the top right, and then we'll move to the center. Oh, there's more space in the bottom left that I forgot about, so we'll put the rest there. And then they get distracted for a second. They look back, they look at the bottom left, and then they totally forget that they had anything in the top right. And then they start making some incorrect deductions based on their work because they don't have all the work there. Or sometimes they're not writing like their numbers carefully. That was actually a big issue, and like sometimes kids would write like the ones like sevens, like they get like a one
And they
or a
couldn't read their own
seven.
handwriting.
Yeah, exactly. They get confused what it was,
Like
or
if you have not taught fourth through seventh graders, like you have no idea. I mean, it is hilariously and exasperating at the same time, right? It's like puppies, right? They're
Mhm.
great, but they're also peeing
Yeah,
on the floor and they chewed up your shoes and they're bark. I mean, it's just like it's like puppies are amazing. They're so fun, but they're also like they can just
yeah,
be a nightmare and from a different
yeah,
perspective. And I think like dealing with like for me, fourth through seventh graders fell on that rank.
yeah,
They're
yeah.
so
It's like
fun,
on
but
one hand, they've got that like young, the puppy excitement about them. They're excited to do this.
they are
They don't really know exactly what it is, but they're excited for it.
they're in for it. They're up
And
for it. They're here for it. Right.
yeah, yeah, yeah. But they just have no idea how to do it. They're so excited that they're sometimes their excitement is kind of preventing them from like just calming down, chill out, listen,
Slow
read,
down,
like slow down. They
listen
just
what
want
I'm
to go
saying, do careful.
everywhere fast. Yeah, they want to do everything everywhere all at once, and it's like
Yes.
no, no, no. You can do everything, but just like one thing at a time. Just finish this one thing, then go do the next thing.
So, but I remember, so you got that you quickly got them up over the hump within a
Hmm.
week or so or 2 weeks of just
Yeah,
you had although you had to keep checking back in. Some kids would get on the rails and then they would get off the rails.
that's right. Yeah, it doesn't take a long time to get them on the rails. This is not like if you really work with them, it just takes a couple days to get them on the rails.
They learn how
And
to read. They learn how to do careful, neat work.
yeah,
They learn how to
yeah, yeah.
read the example. They can read the solution and check. Oh, I made a mistake on the solution. I forgot this step. They learn how to self correct. That.
Because
Yeah.
it's a very systematic procedure. The lesson is a systematic thing. There's a tutorial. There's a worked example. Now you've got some questions. There's another worked example. Now you've got some more questions. Okay, it's a review. You don't have a worked
Mhm.
example. Try your best to remember this from memory. If you tried your best, you remember part of it, but you can't remember the whole thing. Okay, just click the brush up on the topic button. Look, just peek back at the top, just that one thing that you had kind of forgotten. Okay, now close that tab. Like now we're back. Continue, and you just do this over and over and over again. You got some quizzes thrown in, but like there's not this is it's not like every day is. I mean, it's a new lesson, but it's not a new meta game. It's the same meta strategies going on all the
Same meta
time.
skill.
So
They've absorbed the meta skill, but
yeah,
some because it takes a little bit of conscientiousness and discipline to do what they're supposed to do what they're supposed to do as opposed to do what they want to do, which is not read it, not
yeah,
write stuff
yeah.
down.
So there's always a little bit of a drift back. Now they're not gonna. It's not gonna be like you really you get them solid the first day and then the next day they're just completely off the rails. No, it's not like that. And it's more subtle than that. It's the next day they are slightly off the rails, slightly, just slightly. They're still mostly on the rails, but there's like a wheel that's kind of starting to just get a little off the tracks and they're still moving forward pretty well. Like they're making great progress. Like you don't know that this is happening
Right.
yet, but then the next day it happens a little bit more. There's a little bit more off the rails, but still mostly on. They're still making good progress. But then another day or two later, you kind of notice that like, oh, wait a second, like what happened? This
Why
kid
did you
just
only
like
get
failed.
15 XP today as opposed to
Yeah,
40 or 50?
what happened?
You
It was
failed
like
me. What happened?
yeah, you're watching like a little. It's like a very slow but steady decrease in the amount of XP, or in their accuracy, or like
Mhm.
or a slight uptick in the frequency at which they're failing tasks. Um, and then if you don't catch it right there, the moment that you observe like a very consistent pattern, it'll spiral off the rails. And before you know it, if you just if you teach them this meta skill, how to do things properly, and you say like, okay, I'm gonna check back like in a week or two, a week or two, they're gonna have they'll be like just basically back to where they started. It's so you basically have to do a spaced repetition on this meta skill So you teach it to them this first day. You're giving them some independence, but you're watching. A couple of days later, you really you're not waiting for problems to come to you. You're kind of looking, inspecting
Right.
their tasks, making sure like
Mhm.
if anything looks a little weird, you go and you ask them about it. You talk to them about it. You're not like laying into them or anything, like saying scolding them. You're just asking like, oh hey, what happened on this task? I'm just curious. Was there anything that you needed help on or what? Just so they know that you are watching that them that if they fall off the rails, you're gonna be right back
Yeah.
there, being
Kids have
like,
to know
okay,
that
let's breathe this
parents
together. Yeah.
students have to know, especially younger students, but in general, that the adults care what they're doing,
Hmm.
whether it's the teacher or the parent or whatever, that somebody is watching and they're going to hold me to account or make sure that I do this thing. And if I do well, I get recognized. If I don't do what I'm supposed to be doing, I get, you know, a look or a,
Hmm.
frown or a scold or whatever,
Yeah.
depending on the severity. So adult feedback, presence is my another. It doesn't mean you have to sit there the whole time. Now you have to, depending on the age. I mean, you might just sit down with a lesson or two. It might be like a couple sessions. You have to sit with them a few sessions, but you can give them more and more space over time, and then you just kind of check in. Every once in a while, maybe you check in a couple times a session early. Maybe you check in
Yeah.
once a day. Maybe you're just kind of watching, and you start things going off the rail. You sit down and say, "What happened yesterday? It looks like you failed a couple things there. It looks like you're rushing." But one of the things that was one of the failure modes, or sort of a failure mode, is a student would be, every time they get confused, they would say, "Justin, I don't understand." And initially, you would come over and, "Oh, well, let's read this together," and they would feel a degree of comfort from that. And then what happens? They get too comfortable, and so every time they're calling you over, "Can you explain this? Can you help me with this?" And so I had suggested, I said, "Well, I think you need to make it into a bit of a painful for them." Like, "What do you mean?" I said, "Okay, like, this is the kind of pain where you ask your dad for help." So anyone who's ever, this is kind of a dad thing. I mean, moms can do this too, but dads are, it's like a dad. It's like dad jokes, right? It's like, don't ask your dad for algebra homework or algebra help. Oh, back in my day, and he started. I was like, "Oh, Dad, can you just dad, just answer my question," right? And dad's like, "Well, why are you doing it this way? You can do it." The dad gets to the big explanation. It's the whole thing, and you're like, "Dad, no, Dad, come on, you just want to be done with this thing. You just want your dad to answer his question or help you with this one thing so that you can be done with your homework." But Dad doesn't operate that way. Dad is, "Well, let's see here. Well, okay, open your homework. Oh, well, here's a way you want to think about it," and it drives kids crazy. And so what they do is they learn is, don't ask dad for help unless you absolutely need it. And that's
Yeah.
what you
There's a
need.
there's a cost to
There
it.
is a cost. And and so and I would jokingly refer to it as Mr. Helpful.
Yeah.
And I was like, so what you want to do is be the over enthusiastic dad. Be Mr. Helpful. I think I joke because I would joke with Sandy about that in the house. Like, "Hey, you see, you're putting away the dishes. Let me help." And of course, like, screw it up. And she's just like, "Will you just cut it out?" And it was just kind of a bit I would do just to make her laugh. It'd just be like kind of like overly enthusiastic and helpful, but ultimately more pain than it's worth.
Yeah. Yeah. You're
You
like
know,
Clippy the paperclip.
yeah, Clippy, right. So, so you did this. You said, "All right, so just be Mr. Helpful. Go in there and be like,
Yeah.
oh, well, let's get a piece of paper, let's write everything." And then the kid's like, "Oh."
Yeah.
Right? It'd be so much
Yeah.
easier if I
Yeah.
just read this and
Yeah.
figured out than if I asked Justin to come help me, right?
Exactly, right? Because it would come back to the like, okay, are you sure you understood the worked example? Why don't we just like look it over once more just to be sure? And like, why don't you explain this to me? Like, because just refresh my memory on this. Like, I already know it, but I'm just like, no, I'm gonna make you explain it to me. And then it's like, okay, go back to the problem. Why don't you like tell me about what you've done here, and walk me through your work so far. I can already see the work on the paper. I already know where the error is, but I'm not going to tell them because I'm going to make them go through their
I'm
work.
going to inject a little pain
Then,
into this situation.
yeah. And if they go past the error, then you know what? I'm not gonna tell them right away. We're gonna wait until they get to the end, and they're gonna be like, huh, okay, that's weird. Yeah, I agree. That doesn't make sense. Let's look back step by step, see where the first places where it starts not making sense. And so, in addition to being this kind of like Mr. Helpful, like just bumbling in and taking up way more time than is necessary. Um, I'm also like helping them develop this meta process of troubleshooting whatever it is in a very annoying way, but in a very explicit way, where I'm not. There are things that I'm running in my head okay, where's the first error in your work? Trying
Is
to
the
like,
problem they wrote down identical to the problem in the question? Like, did they even write the problem right? Like, that's
and
30% of the
and
time that's the problem. Or 20%.
yeah, exactly. And so I need them to notice this though. If I just tell them what the issue is, then they haven't walked through the process themselves of finding the issue. And finding the issue, like as we know with debugging, that's like it's often like 80%.
Yeah, well, they have
of
to do it themselves to internalize it. You can't just tell
Yeah.
somebody to do something. They have to go through the process. So you're making them
Yeah.
do this process in front of you, internalizing it. Like we said, when we were teaching Eurisco and you're teaching programming classes, teaching kids how to debug code, how to step through code, how to log stuff that's a whole nother discussion. But they were like, what? They would just look at it. They're like, it doesn't work.
Yeah.
And you're like, why do you think it doesn't work? I don't know. And you're like, well, what's the value there? I don't know. Well, why don't you log? You know what I mean? It's just like, they're like, huh? You know,
Yeah,
this whole thing. Now it's easy. It's not hard for us to understand why a 15, 16-year-old kid is learning how to code doesn't immediately understand how to troubleshoot and debug code. But sometimes you forget when you're teaching a 10, 11-year-old, pre-algebra, algebra or something, that there is a troubleshooting process there too. And it's so internalized for us adults that you don't even think to break it down into steps to like, we're transcribing the problem on the screen to paper, understanding the step by, did I make a mistake? Did I write stuff down? Whatever. So, but that's interesting. I mean, that's sort of, and you're teaching these two classes simultaneously. So you're teaching high school students how to debug their Python code, and you're teaching 11-year-olds or whatever how to solve their first algebra equation.
Exactly. Yeah, it happens. It's the same situation plays out. It's like every time the complexity of the challenge that the kid is faced with increases, you get the same kind of issue where it's like, well, they learn over and over that slow is smooth and smooth is fast. You want to go fast? Think through it methodically, step by step, and that's the way to do it. And the problem is like that. It's like they learn this lesson over and over. They learn how to do this with algebra. Then they get really good with algebra, and they get to like skip some steps because they're just so automatic on it, which is great. But then they run into like some new like integrals or some new conic sections work that's kind of forcing a level of like, okay, additional, like this is really complicated algebra. This is not just solving a linear equation or factoring a quadratic. You really have to go back to writing everything out step by step again. And so there's yeah, and every kid also has a different like capacity to do a lot of like this kind of like really quick thinking in their head that may get them. It may be enough to carry them through some levels. Like there's some kids who I'm just remembering some of the particularly like quick, like sharp, quick kids in the class. Like they would in the sixth grade class, they would get through linear equations pretty well without having to write stuff on paper.
Yeah, they could just,
or at least like
they could just
1 step, 2 step linear equations. Yeah, maybe even 3 step. But like at some point, they would just get to like the load, the complexity load of the task would exceed their ability to do this all in their head. And it's kind of unfortunate because it's like the initially, like you look at these students, oh, they're doing great on their tasks. You just initially, if you haven't seen this play out before, you just think like, oh, these students are not going to be a problem at all. Like they got it. All right, they're good. But really, they are the ones who you're not going to break into the right meta skills in the first week, because they have their own meta skills that are subpar but good enough for the time being that it's not a drag on progress and performance. But eventually they hit a moment of reckoning where like they don't want to write everything out, and they've been doing this for a while where they haven't been writing stuff out. They're particularly stubborn, and they don't want to start writing stuff out systematically because they're so used to being able to do it. So it's like the longer you go, the harder it is to break the kids of
Well,
this.
my son was the worst of all time,
Oh my god.
right?
Yeah.
Colby was. I mean, I would say he was probably he had the high, among the most, if not the highest capacity to do stuff in his heads, and he's also the most stubborn.
Yeah. Well, because you're right. He was able to carry. He was able to continue using this like just do it in your head strategy for
Drive me
absurdly long.
crazy as
Yeah.
like, dude, like what, you know, I remember he would do these like in seventh grade even. We're doing these when I first started teaching him calculus, and he would do these really tricky integral substitutions in his head, the entire thing that normally would take like a half page, but then he'd get the negative sign wrong. He's like, "I did it in my head." I'm like, yeah, but you got missed the negative sign, so you still got it wrong.
Yeah.
It's really impressive, but it's still wrong. And it was just
Yeah.
it was so frustrating. I mean, even when he got to like into high school and stuff, I remember, it was still a problem, right? And
Yeah. Yeah.
that's a whole nother discussion, really, I guess.
Because
But
it's a problem because you need to. It's not enough to get like 95% of the way there on a problem to continue building on it. You have to be able to do the skill in full. It's like you can't if you can't land a single backflip like on your feet like well. If you're like 95% of the way there, I could almost do a single backflip. Guess what? You're not ready to do a double backflip. Like
we
it's
still
just
can't
it's
do it
not
yet, but we
happening.
still can't land it.
Yeah.
Whatever. It's still not a success. Yeah, I mean, um, I had a kid. So when he was younger, and I already knew that about him, and then I got a kid just like him in a class below him, and I'm teaching him sixth grade. They're starting just the pre-algebra stuff, losing basic equations, and he would just do them in his head, and I'd be like, "Listen," I was like, "It's going to get harder, and you're not going to be able to do it." And he's like, "Well, I can do it," and he was stubborn the same way. I'm like, "Yeah, I this is like a you know Groundhog Day. The same. He's like the same kind of kid, and he get a lot of working memory, could do all this stuff in his head. Very stubborn, wouldn't write anything down. I said, "Well, I'm telling you, like in a few weeks, we're going to get this, and you're not. This isn't going to work anymore." Because he didn't believe me, right? Sure enough, we get to like I don't know, whatever, solving quadratic equations or something, and they completely fell apart. I'm like, remember when I told you that you gotta like write down the steps, you know, but and he was like, okay, well, this is how you have to do it. You can't just. And so then I'm having to teach him, catch him up to everyone else, the meta skills that everyone else had learned about writing step by step, one step per line, keeping your work organized. They learned that with solving one step and two-step linear equations and inequalities. And now we're on to quadratics, and he had been kind of fudging his way through it, doing 3 or 4 steps at once, and was able to get through it. Now he lacks his meta skills, and now I got to be like, okay, now I got to teach how to do that. So yeah, it's but that's a big. I mean, you said that there's a category of kid that struggles with that, right? There's the category of kid that's just, and then you have the category of kid who's afraid to get anything wrong.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I had one kid like that. I remember in one of the eighth grade classes, and I remember she would sit there. I mean, she actually kind of joined. She was a new student, so I didn't really know her failure modes that well. But so I just kind of uh, figured that, like, okay, if she's not asking me for help on the first day, uh, then like, okay, just leave it. She's an eighth grader. Like, all right, we'll just give her a day to get settled. And it turns out she had stalled out on like the same problem for like 40 minutes, and
Meanwhile,
it's
problem
like,
should take her
what are
like
you doing?
a minute and a half or a minute.
Yeah. This is a problem. Yeah, yeah, right. Minute and a half. At most 2 to 3 minutes if you're kind of needing to refer back to the worked example a bit. But yeah, it was very much, she just kind of like, yeah, she was so afraid to get it wrong. And so what I had to do with her is what ended up working out really well was like she actually had she was coming at the problem the right way. Uh, and it's just she wasn't. It's like she felt like she needed to be 100% confident in every single step she was taking, 100% confident in her answer before she submits it. It's like it was almost like she was like, only submit the answer if I would bet my life on it.
Mhm.
And so, needless to say, yeah, she's stalling out on that, hyper analyzing. Am I sure? Am I 100% sure I got this right? I don't know. What about this step here? Am I like really sure about that? I don't know. Maybe I don't. And so I would just be like, okay, you know what? Take your best guess. It's okay if you get it wrong. Like, you've worked on this problem, you got to a result, and it seems like pretty reasonable the way that you've gone about it. You read the tutorial, you followed the same approach that was taught in the worked example. So just go ahead, go submit it. And so like 90% of the time she would get it right. She just wasn't confident enough to submit the answer. And 10% of the time, she would get it wrong because of sometimes it was a silly mistake. Sometimes it was actually just it was a subtle detail that she had kind of glossed over. But the point was, like, that's okay. Like, this is part of learning. Sometimes you gloss over a detail. Sometimes you make a silly mistake, and that's all right. Just don't keep doing that over and over. The same detail, the same silly mistake. Just keep that in mind for the next time, and then you're not going to make that mistake. You're going to be just fine, and then you keep on making progress.
Right.
And so at home, actually, that was another thing. So we worked this out where during school she would she'd be moving along well, but at home things would kind of fall off the rails again because I am not there to
Encourage her
kind of
to just
encourage her. And yeah, and so what ended up working is just like setting a timer. Like, if she has spent 5 minutes on this problem, like, just submit the answer that you got to. Like, even if you're not confident in it, just submit. There's a forcing function there. Or if you are like, if you're just unsure and you're pretty sure you got it wrong, but you've been like thinking about this for like 3 minutes, like on the same thing, and you're just not sure. You went to the worked example, but like for whatever reason,
Mhm.
you're struggling to map this onto your problem at hand. Like, if you spent like 2 or 3 minutes, you're thinking real hard about it and you're not getting anywhere, just take your best approach at it, and just
Yeah,
submit it.
because you'll get
And
an
maybe you get it
answer. You'll feel
wrong.
like what you'll see
Yeah,
what go, but it's
you'll
you're gonna
you'll see the
learn.
solution.
You're going to see this. You're going to learn faster. It's like, how can I maximize the learning over some set of period of time? Well, you need to put a really solid effort in. If after putting a solid effort, you can't figure it out, and that might include a little extra effort going back, referring to example, trying to debug your thing. If you still can't figure it out, now you're just burning time, and it'd be easier just give me the answer, and then you can figure out, oh, I see, I forgot that step. I need to move the negative sign to the other side of the thing or whatever it is. And it's all about maximizing the learning. So they would shortcut, or they would really drop the efficiency of learning because they just wouldn't get any reps in because they just stall out on one problem, right? Where the
Yeah.
opposite side is the kids just blowing through stuff, not learning anything because they're like, oh, and they're just guessing, and so the the case we talked about earlier, the kids rushing and not reading carefully, I mean, that's way, way more common than the overall
Oh yeah.
conscientious high. It's really like the high anxiety students. Students have a really high anxiety, I think, coupled with high conscientiousness, meaning they really care about doing it right, and they really are worried about making a mistake or getting something wrong. If you have those two things, then that's a situation where you have a student, you have to encourage them to say, look, making mistake is okay. It's part of the learning process. Okay. Everyone makes mistakes. If you're not making mistakes, you're probably not really learning. So, and so for those students, you need to pull them back, say, like, it's okay to make. Now, the kids who make tons of mistakes, you're like, hey, like, look, you're the ones lacking conscientiousness. It's okay. I need you to be more conscious. I need you to read carefully. I need you to write things down more carefully. So it's kind of like getting them into that sweet spot of some reasonable level of conscientiousness. But it's every kid's different. And of course, the battle you're fighting depends not only on them, but also their level of maturity. Are you talking about fourth graders or sixth graders? Big difference. The eighth graders? Big difference between eighth graders and sixth graders, or high school students. I mean, you can have high school students for sure who lack conscientiousness, but you're going to have fewer of, or at least their level of consciousness is not going to be as much of a problem as the fifth graders or something, right? That's they really, especially the boys, for whatever reason, they're not, that's not a thing for them. Most of them, sometimes you get lucky, but most of them are puppy dogs, and puppy dogs, as we know, are not conscientious at all. So, anyway, so those are all failure modes. And I think as a teacher, as a tutor, as a parent, these are all things that you kind of learn after having done this long enough. Like, these are the situations, and these are the situations you need to overcome. Now, one failure mode we haven't talked about, and this tends to happen sometimes with tutors, I've seen, but definitely with parents, which is if you're sitting down with your student and helping them, but by helping them, you're preventing them from making a mistake, that is a big failure mode, right? You have to allow the student to get the problem wrong, because if they don't get it wrong, if they don't get it wrong when they really would have gotten it wrong, then the system itself will, first of all, assume that they know the material better than they do, and it's going to accelerate the learning process or not slow it down if it needs to be, because the system can only see what you're doing. It doesn't have a camera on you and go realize, oh, like, mom is doing the work for him, so yeah, it doesn't know that. So, and I've had this situation where, a friend of mine who's a dad, who's smart guy, engineer from MIT, all that kind of stuff. And he's like, Jason, he's like, I've noticed that my son, that, it's like, it's getting harder for him and he can't really do it by himself anymore. He needs my help. And I'm wondering if maybe we need to like go back, or I'm not sure why it's gotten so hard. And I said, well, let me ask you a question. I go, are you working with him? Are you helping him? He's like, yeah, of course. I go, oh, okay. Well, like all the time? He's like, yeah, we sit down and we do it. I'm like, okay, when you're working with him, because he was homeschooled, the son was homeschooled. So when you're working with him, do you let him get the problems wrong, or do you stop when he's about to make a mistake and say, check your work, I think, or whatever? And he's like, oh, I guess I kind of interrupt and I stop, and I was like, okay, well, don't do that. That's a mistake, because you're feeding false information to the system. So the system thinks that your son knows the material better than he does, so he's getting less practice when he's struggling. Otherwise, he would have to do more problems, which is what he needs, because he's not getting them right. But also, you're sort of preventing him from gaining from the learning process, because when you get something wrong, it's like, oh, I get that wrong, because now I'm not going to get as much XP. I thought I could get bonus XP, but I missed a question, or I thought I was going to full. So the student's like, oh, and then the little bit of pain of missing a problem, it's a little bit of pain. That's okay. It's okay to miss a question. This is nothing. We're part of students or kids growing up is they have to learn to fail in a controlled environment. We're not talking about massive life failure. We're like talking about getting a math problem wrong. They learn to adapt and go, okay, I got that wrong. What did I do wrong? Oh, I misread the problem. Oh, I forgot about this step. Oh, I forgot that my handwriting was messy and I lost whatever. They learn to debug it because the pain helped them remember. But if you just stop them and say, I think you messed something up, you're removing some of the pain and the frustration from the process, which removes the learning experience is less strong as an emotional event. Because sometimes when we learn, a lot of times learning is about doing something and coming up short. And it's a frustration and disappointment with that experience that then causes you to go, okay, I didn't like that, whether it was playing the wrong key on the piano or swinging a racket and missing the ball, hitting over the fence or whatever it is. You're like, that was embarrassing. That was terrible. And then you fix it. But if you're trying to keep the student from making mistakes, they're not going to learn as fast, and you're going to get the system to have a much more optimistic understanding of where your student is at. So, now, in a sense, it's like this is a really great parent, but sometimes a really great parent can do too much. You're over helping. Don't over help.
Yeah, the goal is to foster independence in the student. It is yes, you probably have to sit with them for a little bit at the beginning, model behavior, like help them, like walk them through these meta skills. But the goal is to wean them off of that. That is just to get them on the rails at the beginning, and then you need to gradually step back, maybe like the after a good session sitting next to them, you say, like, next time, like, okay, I'm not going to sit next to you, but I'm going to check in every now and then as you go work on your own work. And then pretty soon you get into the, like, okay, you do your own session, but I'm going to check in afterwards and see how it went. And then eventually you get a point where you don't have to check in on them every single day. Maybe it's like every week, but probably you want to keep checking on them every week or so.
Sure. Yeah, you want to keep an update. I mean, like, look, my youngest is in the SAT. She's about to finish up the SAT fundamentals course. I check in every day, mostly because I'm just really excited and interested to see her progress, because she's like a guinea pig. She's going to be the first one to finish and go on to her upcoming SAT prep course. It's a whole nother thing. But I check in every day, and like when she does really well, but every once in a while, like last night, she failed a task. I asked her, like, how'd you get your XP done? She's like, yeah. She's like, I didn't get it all because I got negative XP. I'm like, yeah, negative XP? What happened? She's like, oh, I don't know, But she knows that I care, that I'm paying attention. Mm-hmm. Like when she does a good job on her quizzes, and I get emails, like, I saw you aced a quiz. Awesome. Killing it, and giving her that positive feedback, and she feels good. Right? Kids want to make their parents happy, and I'm just like, good job, keep it up. You're doing great. You're really learning this stuff. I'm excited. I think you're going to crush the SAT math section. But I'm like, if she's done, I'm like, have you done your XP yet? She's like, all right, well, come on, keep it. We're coming up, right? You have certain schools you want to go to, and you have to have these, super high SAT scores to get there. So, I didn't make the rules. I'm just trying to help you achieve what you want. You say you want to go to these type of schools with these kind of requirements. So I'm just doing my part is to help you. But I check in there every day, usually in the morning. Honestly, I check in more than once a day just because, my software, right? So, but nevertheless, I do, but it helps me because stay on top of things. But one thing I want to just come back to, about the whole over helping. I did it myself. It's so tempting, right? Okay, here's a situation. You're like, okay, we got to do this math. My wife, she's finished up dinner, for instance. Like, I just kind of remember this one scenario, and it's like, we got to finish this up because dinner's gonna be ready in 15 minutes. And I'm trying to, like, okay, let's get through these last couple of things. So I'm sitting there with Colby, and this is, years ago. And I'm like, oh, I don't want to miss stuff wrong because I want to get through it. right? Like we gotta get dinner because you guys got to get to bed because it's getting late. Your mom's gonna get annoyed if we don't eat because your sisters are hungry, whatever, right? So like I'm trying to move things forward as parents do. You're always trying to like, okay, we got to go from here to here. I got to get you up. I got to get you to school. I got to get you to dinner. I got to get you your pajamas. I got to, I mean, it's just always, even though the kids are in high school, you're still like pushing to move things. Maybe you're less involved, but you're always trying to move from stage to next stage. And so you're like, hey, oh, are you sure that's the right answer? I knew not to do it. I just couldn't help myself because I wanted to be done. Like, I don't want to sit here and do this. Like, I got stuff to do too. Like, let's just finish this up. And like by me doing that a few times, I probably saved us 10 minutes. But I also shortcut his learning process. So it actually was okay. We got done sooner. It was short-term win. We got it done. We got dinner on time. Your mom was not annoyed because we took too long. Okay, long-term loss. Now you don't know this stuff as well. Now you do it every once in a while. It's not the end of the world. You do that all the time. It's going to be a problem. You like you said, you forsake the opportunity for them to wean them off you and to learn becoming more independent. But you also shortcutted the learning process of those particular skills because you did not allow them to make a mistake, get the extra practice that they needed, learn to adapt from mistake, all that kind of stuff. So I'm just saying, like I did it too. I did more. I've done it. I did it more than a few times, and I kind of even knew what I was doing at the time. But sometimes you eat a donut, you shouldn't eat it, but you just do it anyway. That was a mistake. Why did I eat those donuts? Sometimes you just can't help yourself. We're human. We want to get through the day. We need a dopamine hit. The stuff there's a stress, there's time, but just, you got to keep it in your mind that, you don't want to be eating donuts every day. Right. As much as I hate that fact, and you don't want to like help your kids or your students so much that they're not making mistakes. It's just not, it's not going to work. It's not going to lead to the result and the outcome that you want. It's going to not deliver the level of learning efficiency that they can achieve if you set things up the right way.